Hey, how's it going, guys? Don't click off yet. I know. I mean, you could see the timestamp, right? You could see it. I swear it's not going to be as long this time. I promise. Anyway, what's up? I just wanted to come back on real quick. I didn't think I would be doing another video about the Dark Ages, and I only really was going to if any details came up about the game that I found interesting and wanted to talk about, really. Because, I mean, for the most part, it's still just going to be a slow trickle of just little features and details about the game until we get up to release. But I still had a lot of questions on my mind after that initial Xbox presentation that have since been illuminated in this new sort of hands-on demo they gave to a couple content creators and stuff. So a lot of details have been flying around about the game. But there's one thing in particular that I find super interesting, and it kind of spreads out and begins to ask us a lot of questions about the Dark Ages in general, and it all stems from one weapon that inspired the entirety of me making that last video. But before I get into things, just some real quick tidbits real fast. One, if you don't know, I have a new VODs channel up here. Somewhere. Yeah, it's up now. I've had to go back and re-upload a bunch of... I'm just gonna hold my hand like this the whole time, not like it's here. I've had to go back and re-upload a bunch of very old streams since Twitch has now added a highlight cap on the amount of VOD storage that you have. But yeah, if you're looking for any like longer form and older content of mine, it's all up over there. It's got an old Emerald Nuzlocke I did from years ago, a full playthrough of Dark Souls, a full playthrough of Elden Ring. It's gonna have way more stuff up there too. I'm getting the last couple like tidbits up there. I still need a bit more time to update all the details on things, you know, like tags, descriptions, whatever. But if you want to see a very bare bones version of that channel, it's up there right now. Go check it out. And number two, please check out my other two friends over on their channel. I don't know why I'm doing this fucking like server bit. I gotta fucking platter out. But please check out my friends on their channels. They put out great stuff. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Now, I'm not gonna go over any of the older details from both my previous video and also just very basic knowledge about the game that's been floating around since we've gotten more details about it. But if you want a short summary about some stuff we've heard about the Dark Ages so far without having to go back and watch a very long video, Dark Ages is first-person shooter, obviously, set in the Doom universe, set in a prequel, like, sort of timeline, kind of the in-between of what we've come to know now as the Doomslayer and the man that was there before, kind of as he first gets picked up by the Night Sentinels to fight against the Demon Horns. And I'm not going to get too much into the details about story and lore, because I'm going to be honest, for me at least, what gets me invested into a Doom story is Doomslayer himself, right? And obviously with the Dark Ages, there's way more of a build around Argent D'Nur, the Makers, more explanations of how these societies and these empires existed prior to everything we knew, both in 2016 and after Eternal, right? But for me, you know, the core of the Doom series is, you know, but plot-wise, that then, like, feeds into the gameplay is being one mortal man against an army of horrible demon spawn, right? That's the whole idea of Doom. So really, I think the thing that gets me most interested about the story is the characterization of the Doomslayer himself. So we have gotten some story details about the Dark Ages that confirm that for the majority of the story, the Doomslayer himself is essentially under, like, mind control. He is the super weapon of gods and kings, and he is, like, simply exists, could be pointed into a direction, and vacate any of the demons that reside there. That's his whole thing. Obviously, you know, we've come to know that both Night Sentinels, Argent D'Nur, like the Makers, all that stuff, they all have some very ulterior motives going on that we've seen, you know, the Slayer reject in Eternal, in 2016 as well, with stuff like Samuel. But for the majority of the game, the Slayer is supposedly under the control of his higher-ups, his overseers. Eventually, he does seem to break control, and I'm curious to see where that will take the story, how that story will lead us into 2016 and everything after. And most importantly, if this story will actually either answer questions we've had about, you know, the larger world and lore of this new Doom series, but more importantly, if there's just any sort of tidbits and knowledge that gets shed on what could be the potential future of Doom after this. We really don't know. I think the story's gonna be cool. It's cool they're doing more cutscenes. I think the game going in a more cinematic and, you know, like really upping the presentation and making this feel like a big budget AAA game experience. The funny thing is, I've been seeing a lot of comparisons to Halo, actually, both in gameplay and in both like storytelling and set piece moments. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think a lot of people will hear that and get worried, but as long as the core is still very Doom, I don't think it's gonna be an issue whatsoever. So either way, I'm mainly a gameplay guy first, and I've had a lot of questions raised about what's going on with both the combat loop in the Dark Ages, the arsenal, how melee feeds into remnants of a resource management system, and we've got a lot of confirmation about how things actually work in Eternal that have completely shattered any of my prior predictions in that previous video. So there's no reason for me to not come back and talk about this stuff, because I think it's crazy, right? So let's just get right into it. So let's start Arsenal, because I had a lot of questions raised about how different things were going to be, how things functioned on a certain level, whether or not this game would have like weapon mods or anything like that. And we have now had confirmed that in Dark Ages there is weapon classes, actually, which is surprising, right? And weapon classes, you know, there's usually 2 between each class. Each are like the main classes. And these main classes kind of make up what would normally be your standard Doom arsenal. There's a couple of new little, you know, fantasy flavorings in there that we'll talk about. But there is, I mean, really the biggest surprise is this whole class system. And what it's really trying to do, which is what a lot of what this game is trying to do, is keep the focus on the gameplay and less about the inputs, right? Because the one thing we've had confirmed with this class system is that weapons will share a loadout slot, right? So take, for instance, the combat shotgun and the super shotgun. That is now tied to one button press. That's now tied. Let's say, I'm assuming on keyboard that's probably going to be like 1. So if you wanted to swap between those 2 weapons, all you would have to do is just press 1 and you would swap between shotgun and super shotgun, right? Interestingly enough, this is a kind of weapon swap system that I've seen in games like Ultra Kill, a couple of others, but I really like it for games with that kind of pace and that kind of, I mean, really to just slim down the amount of button presses or keystrokes you need to make in order to get the thing you actually want to come out. We've had confirmed that currently there are at least 5 main weapon classes and then some others, right, that we'll talk about. But for these 5 main weapon classes, they are the shotgun class, which includes both combat shotgun and super shotgun, already mentioned. There are the sort of accelerator plasma rifle class, which includes obviously the accelerator and the dual barrel plasma rifle. There is the Impaler class, which, but if you've watched that previous video, includes the rail spike and the shredder, that little like kind of dinky nail gun thing that I was assuming was related to the Impaler, and has turned out to be true. There's 2 different variations of rocket launchers we have yet to see. We have known nothing about them. There's also going to be another variation of the Skull Crusher, apparently, which I'm very curious about, because we've seen the Skull Crusher, obviously. It's a very insane weapon to begin with. If I have to make any assumptions about this extra Skull Crusher, I'm gonna assume that, like, maybe it doesn't crush the skulls. Maybe instead it just fires skulls. Maybe it just fires a full-on skull, and it's kind of the less, like, rapid-fire, you know, DPS kind of gun, and instead more of, like, a very heavy burst damage kind of weapon. Because really, that's what a lot of these weapons we've seen in these class systems are broken up, right? Obviously, you have combat shotgun, super shotgun. We've already seen that the super shotgun in this game reloads way slower, and the combat shotgun is always going to be like a little bit faster firing, but a lot less punchy, right? That then goes on to kind of inform the rest of the arsenal, right? You see it a little bit with things like the accelerator and the plasma rifle. Obviously, the plasma rifle is definitely a lot beefier. You see it with the impaler and the shredder. We have yet to see the two rocket launchers, and we have yet to see this final skull crusher. But I have to assume that's kind of the ideology they're going in with. And here's another thing about weapons in this game that is very crazy if you are especially coming hot off the heels of Doom Eternal. Quick swapping is basically out of this game. I'm not going to say it's not there for the most part, but really, switching weapons now is a major commitment. Like, when you swap weapons, there's no just pressing another button again and pulling another weapon out extremely fast to do, like, large damage combos, or just very quickly on the fly, change to a tool that you might need. There's way more of a commitment now in the weapons you choose going into combat encounters, which I actually like a lot. Because as much as I enjoy Eternal's tool set and its arsenal and all that stuff, looking back on it, an issue then becomes, okay, I am faced with this problem, I need this solution right now. And that kind of then just makes the game, the game kind of becomes a checklist at that point. Here's an Arachnotron turret, take it out with a scope, or a sticky grenade. An armored Makubus, blood punch it, right? What's cool about them going back and doing this now is saying, okay, now your weapon choices are much more of a commitment, so you have to pre-plan going into a combat scenario or a room, looking at what's in there, what enemies you're facing, or even just potentially how you just want to play it. You have to make a choice, commit with it for a while, and then it, like, assess the situation, right? Now, this isn't to say that, like, you're every single room you're going into, you're locked into one weapon, right? Obviously, like, weapon swapping is still a thing, but it's definitely moved away from the very combo-centric, super fast-paced quick swapping that Eternal had, which definitely fits the pace of this game way more. But yeah, no weapon mods, just weapon classes, which, again, makes a lot of sense to me. Instead of before having, to have a button map to swap mod types between weapons, instead now it's just, okay, there's 2 weapons to each class type, and they're essentially the different kind of modded versions, essentially, right? Surprisingly, though, this does not mean that the weapons do not have any sort of progression or weapon upgrades or just, like, alternate, like, kind of, like, firing styles even. Because some of the ones we've had confirmed are the combat shotgun gets both a burst fire mode when it gets upgraded, along with Dragon's Breath ammunition, which I think is really fucking sick, and really helps it stand apart from Super Shotgun too, because the Super Shotgun is always it's always been kind of intruding in on the space of the combat shotgun. 2016 combat shotgun is very, I'm not going to say you can't use it. I mean, really the only time you use it is when you're trying to conserve ammo from the Super Shotgun. And Eternal, obviously, Super Shotgun is the star of the show with the meat hook and everything. Combat Shotgun kind of has to carve out its own niche. That's why they leaned into stuff like sticky bombs, eventually full auto in the Ancient Gods and all that stuff. But I do think this is definitely way better. It's especially keeping the combat shotgun an actual shotgun instead of just being, a grenade launcher or some other different kind of weapon that's really not supposed to be, There are some cases with this class system where I'm a little worried about it. I think, like, when I'm looking at the accelerator and the plasma rifle, I'm really asking myself, what's the main difference here? Like, does the accelerator fire faster? Is it better to have the plasma rifles, like, kind of like electric spread that we've seen a little bit? I'm assuming there's things to differentiate these two weapons from each other. I'm just curious to see as to what those things actually are. going over some other little weapon upgrades that we know about, there is a haste function on the one Skull Crusher that we know about, where if you overcharge it, you get a speed boost that will let you just zoom around the arena and just, clock heads and do whatever. So when people say that this game is a lot slower, yeah, but there's still things in it like the shield bash, like this speed up function on the Skull Crusher. There's still a lot of ways to very quickly maneuver, get around. It is just a lot more flat, but I think it works well for this game. So now we have an idea of how the weapon system in this game actually works. Now we're just waiting on a couple outliers, right? Because again, we still haven't seen this rumored other Skull Crusher. We have yet to see either of the supposed 2 rocket launchers we have in the game. The only detail we do know about it is that apparently the shield has complete invincibility after like some upgrades or like perfect parries and stuff. So one thing Hugo has been saying is that the rocket launcher can be used at close range, almost like a shotgun in a way. It still does not tell us how this rocket launcher functions. I hear it's like a grenade launcher. I'm assuming, looking at some of the designs we have seen of one of them, it's similar to a cannon. But when it comes to actual functionality of the weapon, we're still very up in the air. Another weapon that we have yet to see, but we do have confirmed for a fact, is the fact, of course, there is a BFG in the game. But here's the fun part about it. The BFG, while I don't think necessarily they would they would really go super far out of their way to make it so like you weren't naturally put on the path towards this thing. However, the one thing we have learned about the Dark Ages, and really the thing I'm super surprised about, but also very happy, is that they have leaned extremely heavily into the exploration of this game. They tout these wide open maps. We've had confirmed that there is over 22 levels in the game. This includes some of the dragon and the Atlan sections, obviously, but that's still like a largeable size increase from Eternal, not only in number of stages but also scale. But here's the kicker with the BFG. The BFG, supposedly, like some other secrets out in the world, are just out there. You just need to find it on your own. It's gonna be hidden, and it's yours to find, which I think is super fucking sick, right? Because they tout these large open spaces, and they tout like how everything has been scaled up. But my one question going into it, and especially as we're leaning more into this fantasy center, I'm like, you know what, dude? I would be fine if they just go really heavy in this game on like the kind of ARPG stuff. I would even like to see, and the one thing I was kind of hoping we would see, is if they would just hide some weapons that were only available to be found in this kind of like open world kind of level design that they have. And guess what? It's happening. And it's not just happening for the BFG, it's happening for one other weapon we've had confirmed, and potentially many others. So, let me introduce you to this weapon that not only inspired the previous video I made, it has inspired me to make this current video you're watching right now, because I am not only just so enamored with this thing, but it raises so many interesting implications about what we could potentially see in this game. And let me introduce you to the Reaver Chainshot, which if you watched the previous video, you've already seen. I've talked about this weapon previously. I had a big question mark about it because we knew nothing about it other than how it looked, and I just assumed, okay, we've yet to see any kind of like really heavy hitting, maybe like a longer range kind of weapon for this game. Maybe this is the replacement for something like the Ballista. Maybe it's the replacement for something like the Gauss Cannon. It's probably some form of energy weapon, That's what I thought. I was right about it being a heavy-hitting weapon. I was not right about it being a literal ball and chain shooter. The Reaver Chainshot fires a steel ball that just wallops enemies and breaks bones, and the funniest part about this weapon is that not only is it, like the BFG, free to find out in the wild, but it is the only weapon of its class that we know about, which raises questions about similar weapons like it that could potentially exist, and also just, these weapons could be. Like, are we gonna get more crazy different stuff like this? Are we gonna get like a crossbow or something? Are we gonna get, I don't know, more of these kind of weird melee-esque weapons? Because the thing with the Chainshot is, like, it is described as essentially being like a ranged melee weapon. The idea with this weapon is that you're supposed to, it charges up, right? It's very powerful, so it needs to charge up the hit. But if you're working in tandem and using it in tandem with your shields and your melees, both of those things go to charge the Reaver Chainshot again to be fired quicker. So you could just combo this thing and loop it with, you know, blocks, parries, melees, in order to just constantly have this thing out and just be walloping things. I love this gun so much. I love it. It's exactly the type of weapon I wanted to see in this game so badly. But the coolest part about it is now it raises the questions of, okay, are there other weapons like this out in the open? Because I really doubt, right? I really doubt that the only real secret weapons in the game are Reaver Chainshot and just the BFG, right? We were hearing rumors about a secondary super melee weapon, even like a big fucking sword. That's supposedly been deconfirmed, but there could still be something like that out there. There could be another super weapon. There could be something similar to the Unmaker out there. There could be more things like this Reaver Chainshot out there. And here's the other thing about this Chainshot that's going to lead me into some other tidbits and news that we've heard about this game. The Chainshot has been described as being a weapon, like, it's very otherworldly. It's apparently, part of the reason it's a secret weapon is because it is not a part of this Doom universe, apparently. And we were hearing questions about that, and people were looking at this game and seeing a lot of influences from not only other games like it, but, you know, other id properties as well. Obviously, Quake is the one that jumps out instantly, right? Here's the thing. They have gone on record saying recently that their main focus and their main priority at the moment is Doom. Makes a lot of sense, right? However, there is, you know, we take a look at some of these new enemy designs. You have this very octopus, Cthulhu-esque Cacodemon design. We've gone back to the Doom 2 imps. There's things like the Komodo, and most recently, a confirmation of an enemy I didn't even know even existed because I haven't played a lot of Doom 3. The big sort of arachnid enemy that we've been seeing a lot of promotional footage is actually the Vagary from Doom 3. So, beginning to raise a lot of questions there. And you know, they've brought back older enemies before. But what it leads me into is supposedly there are sections in this game, and there are either, like, you know, I've heard purple being thrown around a lot, whether it's like purple, like, portals, energy, keys that lead to these sort of sections where there are enemies and there are things that seem very out of place in this Doom universe. And I begin to ask myself the question, is this going to be the Doom game that finally, like, connects all these little pieces together? Because, I mean, if you're a longtime Doom fan, you know that there's always little hints and Easter eggs towards other id properties, right? Obviously, again, I've made the Quake comparisons. There's little tidbits and hints in both the game I'm about to mention and also Doom that Doom Slayer himself may be related to the protagonist of Wolfenstein. We've seen the Slayer himself in Quake Champions. You know, he's obviously crossed over into a lot of different things. But curiously, for this game in particular, I begin to ask myself, okay, am I going to see a Shambler? Are we going to bring back the Soul Cube from Doom 3, not just as, like, an Easter egg this time? Like, what's really going on with this? And what are the larger implications for this, not only for, you know, the world of the game, but for the game itself? Are we gonna get, like, some weapon, like, are you gonna give me a lightning gun from Quake? Are you gonna give me, like, I don't even know, like, maybe just a straight up AK from Wolfenstein or something like that? Like, there's a lot of interesting ways this game
could go, and it's raising a lot of interesting questions, and it's so funny. All of it just stems from this fucking chain shot, which is why I love this chain shot so much. On top of it just looking like an incredibly fun weapon to use, it being out in the wild, you having to hunt for it, it raising questions about other weapons like it being out there, you know, the world-building implications of this kind of otherworldly forces invading. It's just really, really cool to see. I'm blown away by it, to be honest. And real quick, just some other little tidbits here and there of stuff that I didn't get to cover a lot last time because I was kind of focused on making that video what it was. We've learned a lot more about the Atlan and the Dragon sections. I think they're both fine. I'm glad they're not taking up a large portion of the game. I think the Atlan sections are actually perfect, to be honest. Like, they really are essentially just more of what this game is already trying to do anyway in its combat sections, but just scaled up. And luckily not only, you know, just one-on-ones with Titans, you know, it seems like they actually throw a lot of them at you. The actual environments of these sections look like they're pretty, like, massive and explorable. They're not just, like, arenas and whatever. The actual combat itself of the Titan sections looks awesome. I love that it really is just essentially a big first-person rock'em sock'em robot punch-out kind of brawler. I think that works extremely well with this game. Dragon sections are where I get a little bit more on the fence, and it's mainly just because, you know, we've learned about these sections. They essentially are, you know, while you are flying the dragon for a lot of the sections, there's points where you land on these ships and you essentially, like, you know, you raid them, take them out, explode them, hop back on a dragon, continue the section, right? I think that's fine. My biggest gripe with these dragon sections so far is that they don't look like they control very well. And it's less to do with the actual control of the dragon, and more so about these parts where, like, while you're aiming on the dragon, it kind of locks you into place, and you kind of... The biggest comparison I can make is it's similar to, like, those sections in Sonic Unleashed where you would, like zip back and forth to, like, dodge whatever obstacles were coming at you. And you're, like, you're locked to, like, the X-axis, and you can only go, like left, right. And I don't think that's really, like, the fantasy of what flying the dragon should be. It should feel like, you know, a freeform control section of you flying around, you know, Red Baron, taking out all whatever, like, enemies you're coming across in the skies, and then eventually, like, landing, doing these on-foot sections, and then going back and killing the dragon. Locking the dragon into, like, and especially limiting the movement of the dragon, especially, I think, is potentially a really big deal breaker that is going to make these sections feel a lot more like a chore instead of you know, a great pace breaker, which I really want them to be, because I think the dragon is cool. Like, we want the dragon, we want the mech, we just want these sections to control nice. Some other little things to note. We've heard that the slowdown that we've been seeing in a lot of the footage is toggleable. It's something you can... It is actually a toggleable button press while you can, like, activate it. Essentially, like, while you're holding the shield button and you're doing melee hits and you know, impacts and stuff like that. It'll slow the game down for you if you want to do that. I still think there's even going to be tuners in their sort of slider difficulty system that will make this feel less egregious. But even then, it's still just a toggleable thing. I was worried about this breaking the pace like a lot of people were. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that egregious. On the topic of weapons, we have had the melees explained a lot more to us. Last time, I kind of looked at how they were playing into the resource management. I was figuring, okay, maybe they're just flat-out replacements for the older kind of extra equipment stuff, you know, like chainsaw, grenades, flame belch, all the things that, like, replenish your resources. And they do that. They do. It's not boxed in. It's not like flail is the only one that replenishes ammo, or the mace is only, like, a big super hit weapon. They essentially all do that. All the melee hits in this game replenish your resources. It's just a matter of your choice of what your style of melee is. We still only have seen the three, the fists, the flail, and the mace. I'm gonna be honest, while I do like the variety, and I am gonna experiment with a lot of them and figure them out, I kind of do just get the sense that, like, one of them, like, I mean, really, if the flail is the cover star and the one being used in a lot of the promotional material, even just watching the gameplay, I kind of just get the sense I'm going to be using the flail most of the time, right? It's the perfect middle ground of both speed and range. It looks satisfying as all hell to hit enemies with. It just looks like it's gonna be a good time. So, things to note about the weak point system, which is kind of still here, but not really. Like, instead, enemies can, you know, they get their armor chipped away from, like, shield attacks, melee attacks, and then, you know, that eventually opens them up to critical damage. It's a lot less specific to say something like the weak point system in Eternal, you know. And like I've said, it's less about, you know, uh-oh, Arachnotron turret, hit it with the scope, and instead more of, okay, look at what I have out right now, know how it functions and how it will interact with enemy armor, then break it, then go in for a kill, right? That seems perfectly fine. More notes about this new glory kill system as well. It is essentially it's out, right? Well, let me just say this, right? Because I mean, really, what these are instead replaced with are very impactful melee hits, which I think is fine. Again, they've mentioned themselves about how, because of how many enemies they're throwing at you, and because of just like the slower nature of this game, the old glory kill system, it would definitely feel less satisfying, especially if you had to go through like the very elaborate animation while you're stunning multiple enemies at once, turn around, go to hit the next guy, and then he might be out of his stun phase. I think this works. I think it's fine. I especially think it kind of accentuates the role of melee combat in this game and how it functions with everything else. And I think like, I'm not against it. I know glory kills it kind of hurts to see them go. They're still there in places, like they're still the kind of contextual, you know, if I hit a guy's leg, or if I'm jumping above someone, which we see a lot in the footage, you may still get like glory kills where, like, you know, you saw people in half with the shield saw, or, you know, maybe you like stomp people out or whatever. But all in all, it's being changed to keep the pace of the game brisk and not like, you know, and most importantly, be more so about the actual combat instead of cutscenes that resemble combat, you know? So, I think it'll be fine. It's definitely a concern for some people, but for me, I think it just, with what this game is trying to do, it just makes perfect sense. So I don't think I have really too much else to say, because to be honest, we're 5 weeks out from the game. There's still a couple little question marks we have now after learning some more about these new details. But for the most part, I mean, it seems like we've gotten a pretty clear vision for what this game is going to be. And while I know this is a pretty heavy departure, especially when Eternal came out, fucking kicked the door down, and set a standard for what, like, first-person, like, shooter action games can be, everything Dark Ages does, from its enemy placement design, the way it throws hordes at you, the way the arsenal is being kind of consolidated and stripped down in a way to lean more in towards this kind of melee-focused, bulldozing sort of like style of gameplay. I just think this game looks fucking awesome, man. Like, the more I see of it, the more I get excited to play it, the more I get excited to get my hands on this fucking Chainshot Reaver. And then with the I fucking love this thing. It's just so awesome. I'm just so excited, man. Like, this just looks like another great project from id, coming hot off the heels of Eternal, and it just seems like they've really cemented at this point that every new entry in this Doom series is going to be something not only so different, but something that will not only stand on its own for Doom, but just gaming in general. I mean, like, these games come out and they not only help to redefine, like, what we expect to see from the Doom series, but also what we can see in this industry and what people can deliver on when it comes to, like, big budget AAA games like this. It's just a really awesome thing to see. So yeah, I mean, really not much else to say. Thanks for watching a lot if you didn't. Thanks for all the recent support too, especially even on that last Doom video. You guys were really awesome with that. I know it's a lot to ask for an hour and 20-minute video, which really did not need to be that length. That's why I'm hoping this one is gonna be a lot shorter. But yeah, I mean, like I said before, I don't have too much else to say about the Dark Ages at the moment, because we're kind of waiting to hear more new things about the game, and also just waiting for it to come out. But that does not mean that I am slowing down on getting this Doom ball rolling a little bit, because while next week I am very busy, so I'm not going to be around a lot, the week after, 2 weeks from now, I think I'm going to start an Ultranightmare run of both 2016 and Eternal on my channel, with a fun little twist on it that I think will be a lot of fun to you know, just see and enjoy. So if you want to talk more Doom, you want to see more Doom, come on over to the Twitch. It's been a lot of fun over there. I'm really trying to get the ball rolling again on doing some more interesting, fun stuff. Same with, you know, the YouTube side of things. Obviously, you guys have been waiting for this video to come out for a little bit, along with other stuff. But I appreciate you taking your time with me, giving me any portion of your time. Thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate that. If you're like me, I'm extremely excited for this game. I cannot wait to see how things pan out. I know it's gonna be good. First of all, I just know it's gonna be good. But I'm really interested to see what the reaction is from, you know, the larger portion of the community, including people that bounced off Eternal, people that haven't played Doom in a while, maybe they're looking for a game to hop back on with, the Doom Eternal diehards, who, you know, have had their life changed by that game, and are now being presented with a very different vision of what Doom could be. That harkens back a lot more to the older classic styles of Doom. So I'm curious to see where the divide is on that. But overall, that has yet to stop me from being extremely excited for this game, extremely excited to get my hands on it. Like I said, I'm doing way more Doom content very soon, mainly over on the Twitch side of things, because again, I doubt I make another Doom video unless there's more details about the Dark Ages to talk about. But it'll probably be something like this, so, you know. Anyways, thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys stopping by. Be sure to, you know, sub and stick around if you're at all interested in the content. Go check out my friends in the description below and all that stuff. And I'll see you in the Dark Ages. Peace.